Okay, there's the ERBP logo. I'm Shane Carruth. I'm the writer and director of the film. Basically, everything you're seeing, other than the Think Film logo at the beginning of this, is all identical to what was finished August of 2003 on my home computer, and it's exactly what was shown at Sundance and then later on in theaters, except for the fact that it was blown up from the original Super 16 to 35 millimeter. And this was all shot in the summer of 2001 in Dallas, Texas, where I'm from. That right there is my parents' house, standing in for Aaron's house. It was all written for locations that I had access to or thought I could get access to. Abe's apartment is my brother John's apartment. A lot of the other locations are, I was actually solidifying while I was writing to make sure I could move on to the next scene. As far as like the U-Haul and different restaurants and business offices and stuff. This is all equipment that is a friend of my father's. He borrowed it, and he was very helpful in getting it to us for the couple days that we had it. But you could tell that it was very dear to him. This is the scene that I actually tried out. I did the casting calls with. I tried out over 100 guys for the lead roles. At first I was looking for the 4 leads, and it turned into such a kind of a cumbersome process that eventually I was just looking for the 2 leads, Abe and Aaron. And I was able to find David Sullivan to play Abe, but I couldn't seem to find anyone else. And I got frustrated about it and realized that I had memorized a good portion of the film or the script, and I figured I was going to be there every time we shot, and it was one less person I had to call every day, so I stepped into the other role. Anand Upadhyaya, who's playing Philip, he's one of the camera operators, and then Casey Gooden on the left there, who's playing Robert. He was a friend of David Sullivan's, and they were nice enough to stand in for those roles, and neither one of them, had been acting before or really cared to act, so it was very nice of them to do that, especially Anand, because he was very he was much happier behind the camera. What these guys are doing here is they've got a cottage industry of what are called JTAG cards. This is something I learned about basically from my dad, who was a hardware engineer. But it's a device that goes into your computer, and with it you can connect it up to other appliances and be able to diagnose what might be going wrong with them. And so these guys just have a special version of that they have a cottage industry with, but it doesn't seem to be doing it for them. So they continue to innovate. And I guess I've been asked whether why I wanted to tell a story about inventors or garage level inventors. And to be honest, I knew what the story was way beyond, or well before it had anything to do with science or science fiction. I was very interested in trust and how it's related to what's at risk, and I knew that I was going to have a story with a group of people, or what winds up being Abe and Aaron, who at the beginning of the film or the beginning of the story have this pretty conventional relationship, and because of the introduction of this device or this power that changes what's at risk, that's the thing that makes it so they're not able to be around each other by the end of the story, not because either one of them's a good or a bad person, but because there's just too much to trust somebody else with. And, I was reading a lot of nonfiction about innovation, and I was really taken with that world. Everything from the history of the number 0 to the history of calculus and the history of the transistor and everything that came out of Bell Labs in the last century. I was just really taken with that world and the way that true innovation happens, and I was trying my best to capture that. A lot of the audio here, in fact, probably 50% of the audio in the film had to be dubbed. We were all first-timers on this, and one of the things that I didn't pay enough attention to was getting good sound recording equipment and making sure that we were thinking about that in every scene. And so we ended up dubbing a lot of it. So this basically, all you're seeing here is dubbed. You're hearing the acoustics of my apartment, basically, in Addison. And even, we missed it, but where I go in and grab the M&Ms there's a little sound right there. That's actually Count Chocula, which it doesn't sound anything like M&Ms, but no one seems to worry about that. But this was my schooling in how to dub audio, which is incredibly meticulous and lesson learned. From now on, if I get to make another film, I'll try my best to get better sound the first time through. All right, this is the first scene that we shot in the entire shoot. I don't know what is wrong with me or why I thought that the first thing we would shoot would be a long dolly shot that goes on for several minutes with action from all four of the lead characters, but we did it. We rehearsed this a lot. Dave and I rehearsed for a month, and I think this scene in particular with Casey and Anand involved, it must have been a couple days at least, just repeatedly going over this 30 or 40 times until it felt like it was prepared improv, basically. Everything that they're saying here is based in real stuff also. It was just incredibly important to me that we believe that they know what they're saying and that they're saying real things. The device that they're talking about, this is a device that actually exists in the real world. Superconductors exhibit this quality called diamagnetism, where objects that aren't magnetic or metallic will actually levitate above them. Usually the device has to be about the size of a house, and it has to be cooled to near absolute zero, and so our guys are finding a way around that, or a couple ways around that, and by doing it so efficiently and by basically changing the nature of what the device is, it has these side effects that the rest of the story is built on. And because the dialogue is so tech heavy, the hope is that, those scenes have information in them, or they were built with information in them about the politics of the group. Who's proprietary, who's enthusiastic about what the informal groups are within the group. I mean, the hope is that even if these guys are speaking a foreign language or humming, that there's information that's moving this story along. This is something that was important to me. Anand is going through a procedure for getting a new piece of equipment. And it was important to just show that these guys are basically just kids in a clubhouse, that they're technical experts, but ethically they're just kids, and they've never really had to deal with any kind of the moral implications of what they do for a living or for their hobby. And so when those issues arise, they're pretty much blindsided by them. But everything about the way these four guys and their group is structured is to drive home the idea that they're basically just prep school kids. Their uniforms are artifacts of their day jobs. They have no meaning in what they're doing in their hobby. There's no reason why two guys pulling a catalytic converter out of a car should be wearing ties. But that, and the way that they have a method for voting for whether they can buy new equipment, and the fact that they have a little logo and a name of the company, Amoeba Devices, and little labels and stuff. It's all stuff that I imagined a 6-year-old would think was cool about having a company. And that's pretty much the way I saw these guys. That on the right there, that's my brother John, standing in as a guy on couch one. This is the metal shop where we got the metal. That's Jay Butler, who was nice enough to supply us with some stuff for free. I designed the boxes and the plates and all this stuff on some 3D equipment on my computer. And eventually, I knew I was going to need some sheet metal, so I started calling sheet metal companies all over Dallas, Fort Worth, to see if they had any leftover stuff, because I didn't need it to be functional or rust resistant. I just needed it to be metal. And shiny, although not too shiny. And basically, I got a hold of Jay Butler on maybe the 5th or 6th phone call and told him what I needed it for. And I think he was just really enamored with films and stuff. So I showed up there, and we talked a little bit about filmmaking. And it seemed like as long as I was willing to be up there and talk about it, he was willing to man one of the machines and cut us some metal. So that was a pretty good experience. He was very helpful, and he got a role as the metal shop worker. This scene here, it was about 2 pages of dialogue that I had written, and we rehearsed it and got it to where we liked it. To be honest, it was somewhere, I think, as we were performing it, or a couple days later when I realized that it was much more important that we kind of end these 8 minutes on this last scene of the four of us having any kind of civil discourse, because we're about to get so proprietary. And so it was much more important to have that last image with the music than to hear what we were talking about, which was something about Microsoft and antitrust cases or something. Also, as far as the music, it was all done on my home computer using a lot of equipment, basically, or not a lot of equipment, but a lot of software. I didn't really have the right tools, and so I kind of made up for it by using a lot of inferior tools. But the main idea was to start with acoustic instruments. We're hearing piano and acoustic bass here. And then as the story gets more fantastical, we're hearing more ethereal and atmospheric type music to kind of mimic what's going on with the story. This right here is the only special effect in the film, and I hope it shows up on your TV. Basically, the way we did it is we shot this scene right here on mini DV footage, basically the camcorder that you're looking at there. And I took that footage home to my computer, and with a 3D program, I rendered paper dots and then composited them onto the mini DV footage and dumped that back out to tape, put the tape in the camcorder, and then 3 days later, when we're shooting for the film camera dollies with Abe and then racks focus behind the mini DV camcorder, and you see the footage there. And so we sync the performances to match, and we sync the camera movements to match the special effect. So the special effect only exists on that camcorder. I ended up getting a lot of use out of mini DV also in this film. We're about to see a shot of a Weeble being dropped into the box, and basically that was done. Shot on mini DV a couple weeks beforehand, and then composited it on my computer, colored it green, and gave it some grain to look like it's night vision. And then later on, when the box starts shaking apart, if you look to your left, you'll see the effect take place on that monitor, and that's an effect that was also done on my computer. Even later on, when there's the timing device on the coffins. That's a little display that I made up in After Effects and put it out to mini DV, and then put it on the camcorder, on the LCD screen on the camcorder, and then hid that screen behind a metal framework that kind of makes it look like hopefully an abstract type of timer. And this next display that we're looking at on the table that shows that the Weeble is losing weight. That's actually a display. There it is. From an actual weighing machine that you use to weigh like mail when you're trying to figure out postage and stuff. And so I just took the display out of the machine and then put like a system of screws and bolts and things that weighed very little on there. Except in doing it, I must have torn a wire, and there was a short, and it was never consistent, and it was a nightmare. And I think we wasted more film shooting that than we did on anything else. It's probably the only thing that we shot more than a couple takes on. This moment right here is pretty important to me. This pausing before you turn the machine on, just this moment of unknowing. I probably stole it from Great Gatsby, that moment before Gatsby kisses Daisy. All right, there's the effect on the left on the monitor with the Weeble. Basically, when we shot that on mini DV, me and Anand Upadhyaya, I put a 32-inch TV behind the Weeble, and I hooked that TV up to the camcorder that we were actually shooting. And so you get one of those images, where you point a camera at the TV that it's plugged into, and you see that infinity of images. And if you do it in a darkened room, it tends to blow out, and it looked analog and it looked interesting. So that was the effect that we used. This here, there's about 3 seconds of black that hopefully are on your DVD between the time we pull up that box and the time we see Abe on the floor. Those 3 seconds were missing. The first time it showed at Sundance, there was some kind of problem with the print, and so I spent the rest of the day trying to get those 3 seconds of black in. But that's a problem that plagued me even as it went into theaters. There was just something from the original negative which eliminated those, and without them, it sort of looks like they lift up the box and then suddenly Abe's on the floor. It almost looks like there was an explosion and he got blown to the ground or something. And so those 3 seconds were always important to me. And I've been trying to get them back ever since.
Stuff I want to take back to the shop.
All right, but meet me at the door.
Okay.
This guy has a huge brick of a cell phone on the side of his head, and basically, if you see any of the devices in the film, the laptop that we're using later is a laptop that's maybe 5 to 8 years old. It's a big brick of a thing. It's not very shiny, and it doesn't look very contemporary. And using devices like that, I needed some of these things, but I was trying my best to make it as timeless as I could. And so I always found devices that weren't necessarily cutting edge, that kind of hopefully can't quite put your finger on what year they would have been popular. This is all shot with available light. There's a big blue sodium light over this driveway here. This is where I used to live. And so we shot with just available light, with not even very sensitive film, just 200T. And Anand and I had talked about this, the idea of shooting night the way it actually looks and not the way it tends to look in bigger production films where things are a little bit too well lit and dark isn't really dark. So we have some muddy colors here, and it's difficult to see what's going on, but believe it or not, that was the intention. This dialogue is again dubbed. You're hearing the acoustics of my apartment, which are not the same acoustics as you would get on a street. In theaters, it sounds appropriate because basically the sound is bouncing off the walls of the theater, and so the reverb sounds right. I did my best to make it sound as good as I could, so I hope the effect isn't exaggerated when you're watching it on TV.
Right, just the box. The plate stays the same.
Yeah, the plate's the same. What you do is you gradually feed it.
The sound effects in this film of the machine, the plate, the box, and then the coffins, they're all based on analog sounds. I went around and I collected sounds of a car revving up, of a metal grinder that we actually see in the film, but the metal grinder takes about 15 seconds to warm up completely and then another 15 seconds to cool down. So I recorded that. And the sound of barber shears turned on and being pushed up against a cardboard table. I took all those sounds and I would reverse them or pile them on top of each other until the appropriate sound came out, because it was important to me that it not be a digital sound effect from some kind of computer effect, that it start from somewhere analog. Most of the film is shot with available light, either daylight or practicals. The bit of lighting equipment that I did use is I bought a set of fluorescent banks at Walmart for about $30. I bought some daylight balanced bulbs that would tend to go blue under tungsten film, and then we would use practicals, normal everyday lights that would tend to go very yellow under the tungsten film. And then I found that through the color correction, we did a couple tests, but through the color correction I got a look that I thought looked interesting and real, which were the only two things I was really worried about. And it doesn't look overly lit. Not that I ever really had the ability to shoot a very glossy, high budget look, but luckily, this seemed to satisfy the equation. Something that's about to come up here is I used every spare frame that we shot. I didn't shoot enough footage, and so because of that, I needed everything from the first frame, once the slate has cleared, to even as I'm saying cut, and you can actually see me say cut coming up here. I got into the habit of saying it under my breath. Cut, there it is, yeah. And it happens about 8 times in the film. Obviously, I took the sound out, but that's just an example of how much we needed every single frame. We shot only one take of everything, except for the scene that you're looking at now. This, I continue to mess up. I think the line is something about it's my garage and it's not like they're paying rent. And what I kept saying is it's my apartment and it's not like they're paying rent. And I don't know. There was something wrong with me. I need to be studied. But I kept saying it, and so we had to shoot that 3 times, which was a huge waste of film compared to everything else we had done.
Imagining devices the size of jumbo jets.
Something else that was a waste was that the first 15 minutes of the film are supposed to take place during Christmas time. We're seeing, there's a red bow on the refrigerator. There is a Christmas tree in Aaron's living room. There's Christmas lights there. And basically, I had bushy hair, and it looked like David Sullivan had bushy hair, and so we thought, well, let's shoot the first 15 minutes that take place around Christmas time with the hair the way it is, and then later on, we're talking about March Madness, so clearly it's 3 months later, and we thought, well, we'll get haircuts, and then we'll shoot all that, and then it'll be one more visual cue that will show that some time has elapsed. That ended up not paying off at all, because I don't think you can tell the difference between bushy hair and haircut hair. So and the thing we shot everything in the first 15 minutes before we moved on, obviously. And so because of that, the normal approach of shooting everything you possibly can at a location before you move on to something else did not work for us in the first 15 minutes. Okay, so we're almost done with Christmas time, and it goes to black, and when it comes back, we're in March. And Abe is coming across the top of the building, and there are lots of scenes that are set on the tops of buildings or on the top of a parking garage, basically with Abe and Aaron, or Abe looking down on the rest of the world. He's clearly, this is the first moment that he has used the machine. He is back, in a world that he knows everything about and has the ability to manipulate. So that power position of being on top of stuff is very important. Also the sound, it's gone now, but there was the sound of waves crashing and seagulls that fades into the everyday life sound of the street. But that's a sound that we keep hearing. When Aaron is coming back for the first day, when he's in the truck, then we hear the same sound. And then when Abe comes back the second time, we hear the sound again. And that was important to me, that it be this intoxicating effect over them. The sound here is getting better. As the film goes on, the sound gets better, and this is actually location sound, and I started using a noise reduction plugin on it, and so you kind of hear some artifacts, but it sure does work a lot better than dubbing stuff. Even when you're dubbing lines, even when you get it perfectly timed, it's almost never with the same believability or I don't know, impact that you get from live audio. A lesson that I continue to learn over the course of the 2 years of editing and doing post work on this.
It looks like mustard to me.
All right, there is a Weeble, and I thought this would be the easiest thing in the world to get my hands on. I had written it into the script as, the thing that they would be putting in the box as their little test device, and the fact that it looks like a little man and it's a childhood toy, all the better. It seems like an artifact from his daughter's toy chest. So I thought it fit, and I thought it'd be very easy to get because I grew up playing with them and I thought they were everywhere, but they are not everywhere. And I went to all kinds of antique stores and everything, and I couldn't find them. I finally found one on eBay a couple days before we actually needed it, and I ended up having to buy the Weeble fire truck and the Weeble camper just to get a couple Weebles. But hey, it paid off, don't you think?
What you told me.
This is the clean room at University of Texas at Dallas. That is Professor Bradshaw, who was nice enough to let us shoot there. He runs the clean room there. And we were allowed to be there, but the camera had to be on the outside looking in. So that's actually being shot through paned glass. And the sound is, we shot with a wireless microphone, but the sound was really horrible because it's so loud in there. So we actually, right after that scene, we went into Professor Bradshaw's office and we reperformed the scene just for sound. And the timing was way off, as you can imagine. And so what I did is, in editing, I took the sound from the office and cut it up basically by the syllable to make it match our lips from the video. That is Ashok Upadhyaya, who was Anand's brother. And he, at the time, was a master's student at UTD in the biology department. And so he was nice enough to let us come in after hours. This is another part of the campus that we were able to get to during the day. It was pretty empty on the weekends, so nobody knew we were there.
The reason you don't leave things in dark, damp, closed-off places.
My one piece of good directing in the film is probably giving him something to eat as he performed. It seemed to make him feel a little bit more comfortable with performing the lines. The funny thing is, Ashok is in the film maybe all of a minute and a half, and but as far like our conversations about the technology of what we're talking about, this supposed strain of Aspergillus ticor, and how it works and why it's secreting protein and what it all means for the device, the conversations I had with Ashok were probably the most lengthy that I had with anybody. Coming up here is, apparently, according to Reggie Evans, who does the sound, he claims that you can see his knee in the shot when the door is opened here. And yeah, okay, I guess you can see it, but it just looks like any other flesh-colored thing in there. I don't know. In editing and doing the music and dubbing and Foley work, I must have seen that scene all of 1,000 times, and I've never noticed the knee until he pointed it out to me. So I probably shouldn't have pointed it out to you, should I? These photographs that he has in his hand, those were, I took shots of Aspergillus and then photoshopped them to make it look like they came from an electron microscope, and then sent them to one of these online photography places that'll send you your prints.
And
I want you to do it.
We're coming up on the explanation of how time travel works in this film. One of the things that once I knew that these guys are going to be maneuvering through time and this machine's going to allow them to do it, I wanted to build an analogy of how it would work that would kind of answer some of the questions I had when I would watch other films that have to do with time travel. This whole idea of picking up at one point in time and moving to another. Marty goes from present day to the 50s. It's all fun and stuff, but something about that bothered me. And the idea that, if you jump back a day, if you jump back 24 hours, you would find yourself in empty space because of the amount of distance that the Earth has moved since then in its orbit. And so it seemed like if you want to address moving through time, you've got to talk about keeping up with where space is. And so the easiest way to do that is to when you move through space, you have to move through each space, or through each inch between you and a door if you're going to the door. So it seems like if you're going to maneuver through time, then you need to pass through every moment between here and the past to get there. And so we've got this device here, this box, which is separate from the outside world. It's got its own arrow of time, and that time is circular. The Weeble is in the box for about a minute, and or according to the outside clock, it's about a minute, but it experiences 1,300 minutes because it is experiencing the time from 12 to 12:01, and then 12:01 back to 12. And then it does that again over and over and over again, and it accumulates time that way. So since the Weeble is stupid and it can't get out of the box when it wants to, it is forced to live through all 1,300 minutes. Abe and Aaron, who are slightly smarter than the Weeble, are able to get in at one point and get out at another, so they're able to ride one of these loops and use it to their advantage. This scene here, it was one of the hardest to assemble because I think I've talked before about how we only shot the lines that we needed from any given shot. So it's pretty much pre-edited. And this one, I don't think there was a shot that lasts longer than 5 or 6 seconds. And so, we're literally, we're turning the camera on, we're acting for 5 or 6 seconds, then we're shutting the camera off. And maintaining that energy is one thing altogether in a performance, but the other bit of editing it, and if there is ever a moment of not having quite enough footage, it becomes this rough puzzle that is not very satisfying to solve, and it ended up taking weeks, basically, just to assemble that one scene, believe it or not. There are a lot of dolly shots in the film, and most of them use straight track, and the problem with that, or the difficulty with that, is when you're changing the distance between the camera and an actor or the subject, you also have to change the focus because that's changing as well, and it's a huge strain on time. You end up having to rehearse these shots 20 times to get them right, and something that occurred to us along the way and we finally realized is that if you use circular track and you put your actor at the center of this circle, the distance never changes between the camera and the actor, so you can do some dolly shots and you can get some movement like this. And I think we rehearsed that all of 3 times. And so you get the same movement and you don't have to rehearse it 20 times. That originally was supposed to be shot from 3 different dolly shots, believe it or not, and then they were going to be quickly cross-faded into each other for kind of a turnaround, otherworldly effect. And I was really worried about that, the way we actually executed it, because it looks very much like a Bruckheimer big budget action shot. It looks like I should have a shotgun in my hand or something. And but I don't know, I tried to visualize it and imagine it without the whoosh sounds and the big score, and it seemed to fit the moment appropriately.
So it actually makes the place smaller. No, there's a lot more that's unnecessary. Look what we can do.
Coming up on the U-Haul location, which is a place that we spent 3 days in, and in the summer in Dallas. And I don't think every member of the crew has said something about the fact that it's hard to even now to drive by this building without shuddering. This is the first location that I secured. I remember faxing back and forth to U-Haul corporate to get permission to show their logo and to actually get permission to shoot on the premises there. And they're a big corporation, and so there was a lot of legalese and stuff, and I sent them a copy of the script. I think they wanted to make sure that there wasn't any porn involved or something. I guess they didn't want that being shot in their storage facility, so I took all the porn out of the script, and then they were okay with it. What was weird, though, is because we showed up to shoot at this U-Haul, and the local place had no idea that we were allowed to be there. And so I was sort of worried for 5 seconds until they said it was fine, and that they gave us a storage room for about a week to keep the stuff in and to shoot in. And it was great. And that was actually the first of many times that happened. There were grocery stores that I had been, faxing with the corporate headquarters and getting permission, only to find out that once we showed up, the permission didn't matter. The local stores hadn't heard about it, but they were still willing to let us shoot there because I guess in Dallas you don't see a lot of film cameras, and you kind of want to, or they seem to be enamored with what it was all about. This shot right there is one of the two shots in the film that uses a 45-degree shutter angle, so that you get a sequence of very sharp images as opposed to normal fluid motion. Those are my feet there that just walked into the room. I'm playing Abe's double, or at least his feet, and then there's David coming around the corner.
Let's just wait.
The monstrosity that's coming up that's in this room, this coffin, is the most poorly designed prop in existence, I would imagine. I got it in my head that it needed to. It's made out of PVC and sheet metal, and for some reason I got it in my head that it needed to support its own weight. I don't know why. I don't know why we didn't build a wooden frame and just glue all the other elements onto it, but I didn't. And so because of that, it sags, and it's a nightmare to move around. Put it in the back of my dad's truck to get it there. And we actually, when we were done shooting, we brought these things home in my dad's truck. And I remember Anand and I were in the back trying to hold it down because we're on a highway and it's trying to blow all over the place. And it fell apart. It fell into its pieces, and so we just went straight to the dump basically and threw it away.
Look, you sure you're okay to drive?
That's David Sullivan's car. He was nice enough to let us put in the film. This moment here, this is the first time that Aaron has had to deal with finding himself in someone else's past. And it's sort of an important moment, although we don't make a lot of it. We do make a lot of the fact that when Abe has his moment where he is found in the past, the way he reacts to it is by rebooting the entire story. So there is this sense that you do not want to be here. You don't want to be in someone else's past. You don't want to be second class. You want to think of yourself as at the front of the line and in charge of the events in your life. And so what we find out later is that, Aaron doesn't deal with this too well, and continues to follow his base nature and tries to get a good reputation as a hero, and lets that become something that overwhelms his better judgment. This is a scene right here, but there was a scene written, and it actually has to do with the fact that it makes sense that time travel would work the way that they're seeing it work. It just seemed a little bit too expository, like I was trying to explain how clever I thought I was about coming up with time travel this way. And so it was much more important just to see them in this domestic setting, and also the fact that they stop talking when Kara comes in the room. And so that bit of information was important. There's a lot of domestic stuff going on. I wanted to mix in Aaron's home life with the way that they would have to kind of hide what they're doing with this machine from it. This location we're actually at a Sonic drive-in. It's about 6 a.m, but it's important to be there, to be in front of those jets that are in the background. My attempt at foreshadowing where Aaron is where these guys are gonna end up by the end of the story. And we have multiple Aarons flying off to who knows where. But that Sonic actually was really difficult to get permission for, but we found that no one was there at 6 a.m, so we just went and sat down.
Flooded the box with argon, and then I had to tighten it up.
This is another piece of music that I was trying to be as simple as I could. This is their first day, and they're learning. That's the timer I was talking about. That's basically the mini DV camcorder LCD screen behind that gold plate. Okay, let me talk about this car mount. James Russell, the assistant camera operator, was amazing. He built this camera mount that goes on the hood of a car. He read about it in some magazine and assembled it with pieces from a hardware store, and it scared all of us half to death that we were going to trust this thing that he made with this, $30,000-$40,000 camera that we're renting. But we did some tests with it, and it worked perfectly. It was really amazing, and more importantly, it didn't do any damage to anybody's car, which was kind of a surprise to me too. But that helped a lot. We used that 4 times. Once for the shot you just saw, one for a shot where I'm coming, or Aaron is having his first day, or later on in this scene, in this sequence of shots, and then in the night sequence where we see Granger, we used it twice there. This hotel is the Hilton in Dallas. I had secured a hotel room at, I guess I won't say the name of the hotel branch, but at another hotel in town, and basically the day before found out that it wasn't going to happen. They were going to be nice enough to let us use a huge suite there, which I thought would be, if these guys are making money, they would probably want to spend their 6 hours in the biggest room they could probably afford, that they probably hadn't been used to being in. But the morning of, I called around, and Hilton was nice enough to let us have a room there, so we shot there. This is Richardson Public Library, where half of the script was written, and also that's where David and I did rehearsals for a month before we started shooting. We would go to the kids section of the library, where you could be a little bit louder than anywhere else because all the kids are screaming. That's a little piece that I don't know if anybody notices, the fact that Abe tries the wrong door, and it's Aaron who points him to the correct door, because at this point, without us actually knowing it, Aaron has had much more experience with coming to this facility and which box is where. And these scenes are incredibly blue because we hung the daylight balanced fluorescent bulbs that I was talking about from the ceiling. These storage rooms actually didn't have any light in them. And we're coming up on one of the worst dolly shots in the entire film. And I was manning camera, which is why I can say that. That's not me. That's me operating the camera. What's going on? What? Out of focus? Not even pointed at David? What's wrong with me? And now I'm back in focus. Hey, it only took me 10 seconds. Inside the box is, this is actually, it's my torso here, but the hope is that it's difficult to tell because it could be either one of us. This is actually, we had spent the day at the storage facility shooting these shots, and then we went back to my parents' home, and in the middle of these interior shots are shot in the middle of their living room. We turned all the lights out and backed the camera up about 20 feet to get these really tight shots. And of course, the only light source is the light that's in my hand.
But I remember this moment in there, in the dark, with the reverberation of the machine. It was maybe the most content I've ever been.
This next scene, when
I woke up on my own.
When Abe gets out of the box, it's we're in the storage room. It's the door's closed. There is basically only 3 of us in the room at this time. There's David Sullivan who gets out of the box. I'm hiding over underneath the camera, basically, about to crawl into my fetal position, and then Anand is manning the camera. And Reggie, who did location sound, had just basically left the mic in there recording the sound so he could get out of the way. Sorry about that. That's my cell phone. They always seem to ring at the worst times, just like in the film. These yellow bands around the boxes, they were actually written in the script. The idea that we're trying to tighten them up to secure any argon leaks. In the end, they actually were the only things keeping those things in one piece. Here, I've actually got a T-shirt on. I don't even think you can see it. It's an Amoeba Devices T-shirt that I made, thinking that it would be that they would want T-shirts for their little group. I don't even think you can actually see it at any given time. And I still have that shirt, but it's faded. So no, it's just a white shirt. I've gotten some questions about the colors in the film, and to be honest, when I was writing it, for the longest time I was thinking that what I was going to do is shoot the present day shots with normal daylight balanced film, and then shoot whenever we go back in time or whatever, shoot those with tungsten balance film, and so you kind of get a different palette depending on whether you're a primary or a secondary or a triple or whatever. But as I was writing, it finally dawned on me that if you're doing this right, if you're maintaining symmetry, there should be no difference between the experience of the first and the second and the third, and that's kind of part of the problem of not knowing. And so I definitely didn't want to differentiate the experience. And so then it was really just a matter of, as far as color timing, it's just a matter of separating locations. Outside is always very yellow and tends to go a little red. And then I like the sterility of blue lights and blown out windows.
They'll announce their earnings for the quarter 3.5 times.
This is all shot supposed to look like or at least I was hoping my best to make it look like a really bad corporate commercial about getting things done.
It doesn't matter. All that matters is that the price goes up.
Let me talk about the extensive wardrobe here. These are $12 shirts we got from Walmart. About 4 white and 4 blue, and we would just switch off. We're always in the same outfit, basically. We're always either wearing the same diagonal striped ties, or same looking ties, or we're open collared, untucked, or in our gray sweaters or whatever. I'd always thought of Abe and Aaron as the same guy, intellectually, physically, and age-wise. But for some reason, one of them has a family and a home and is the unofficial leader of this group of guys, whereas the other one doesn't have a home, doesn't have these things. The biggest thing that might be going on in his life is whether he's being charitable to the guy staying on his couch. And so why is that? How can this be? And the few scenes that got deleted from this film, it's a 78-minute film, and I think we had shot enough footage and there was enough in the script to make about an 80-minute film. There wasn't a lot left over, and none of it really has to do with the plot and how complicated it gets at the end. It had to do with who Abe and Aaron are as people and how it is that they find themselves in this place where one of them has a home and the other one doesn't. And it pretty much all boiled down to Aaron had a girlfriend who later becomes his wife, and she'd gotten pregnant, and so that dictated their early marriage, which dictated the home, which dictated the fact that it would be his garage that they were working out of. So it's that one moment that gets them to diverge, and it I'd always thought of even back when I was writing really bad short stories and stuff in college, the time machine is the device that's missing most. I think maybe without people being able to say it out loud, that's the thing I think anybody would want more than anything, is just the ability to take whatever it was that went wrong and to fix it.
Why'd you ask then?
This is what I would do.
Oh, but I started talking about the outfits, and there was the sameness of these two guys, but then there's also just the way that we start off very prim and proper in our ties, and as the story gets a little odder and we start having our little time travel adventures, that things are coming apart, and we're less likely to be in ties and less likely to have our shirts be tucked in and stuff. Things are unraveling. The song that's playing in the background here is the one piece of music that is from someone else in the film, and that's my brother Caleb. He's a recording artist who's got a couple great albums, and he was nice enough to let me use this song. Of all his songs, this one sounds the most country, I guess, and I thought it would be a very suburban type thing to hear in someone's home. This is the scene I found out where my parents were committed to this little thing I was calling a film, because they let us move their couches all over this living room so that we could get the dolly. I mean, earlier in the scene, there's a dolly shot, so that we could get this big 20-foot dolly across their living room. And it's furniture moved. It's the track, this greasy track laid down over, cardboard so we don't mess up the carpet. But then talcum powder has to go all over the place. And by the end of it, it's just a huge mess. And the fact that they let me do that in my mom's nice little Holly Hobby wannabe living room was pretty amazing. On top of the fact that she catered the food. She brought food to us as we were off on these locations. And my dad was there most of the time too to help carry boxes and stuff. I think he did the slate most of the time as well. This scene here, shot at this gas station, this is one of the places that we didn't have permission for. No matter what I tried, I couldn't get the woman there to agree to it. So basically, we took the camera and put it at the car wash that was across the way. And this is a shot from across the street as well, from the other side. And we just went, David and I went and filled up my dad's truck with gas and performed the scene and shot it from about 4 different angles. Not the whole scene from 4 different angles, only lines we needed, because I am a cheap bastard. There's the last shot in the film is coming up. It's an insert of David listening to me. It's coming up soon, but it's the last shot that we shot in the entire shoot. It's as I was assembling these roughly in my editor. That's it right there. There was a little bit I needed a little bit of just this ponderous waiting, and so we shot that as the last thing. Here's the hotel at the Hilton. We recorded this with wireless mics, but they never worked right. There was always so much noise, so we ended up dubbing the sound over this. This is all dubbed.
Anything I tell you, she'll know.
It's not a matter of trying.
That's a huge violation of time. What did we just jump 4 seconds forward? What happened? Go from the hallway to the elevator immediately. This is at the Richardson Public Library, and they were incredibly nice to let us shoot there, but we needed to do it before the library opened, so we didn't bother any patrons. So we had about an hour to set up all these shots that we did, and we needed every last minute. And then patrons started coming in, and it's a shot earlier in the 10-minute first day sequence where you see us walking towards the camera, and that's when some of the first patrons of the morning were starting to come in.
Let's return.
We shot on Super 16, which is, most people when you go to the theater, you're used to seeing stuff that's shot on 35 millimeter. It has a certain look to it, and the 16, it was a little fish-eyed for my taste, and so the way to combat that, we found, was to back the camera up basically as far as we could get and kind of zoom in on shots, and the perspective changes a little bit, and so you get something that, to my eye, approaches more of a look of 35. So basically these shots are, the camera again is backed up about 20 feet. Well, obviously that one is up on a ladder that we had in there. This shot, the dolly had this hydraulic, and you would pump it up to get to its highest level, and then you hit a button and it releases, and so we used that as one of the shots. That shot there of the door coming down, I put a mirror right underneath the door, so that and then the camera is just on the floor facing the mirror, and so it looks like the camera's directly beneath the door frame.
About what?
I was on or near the ocean, and I just kept hearing the surf. It was so
music's getting more ethereal. I felt like I had some license to do that as the story gets a little weirder, and we're talking about the intoxication of this device and what it's doing to them. All right, we're about to see some blood here. This is, we had to experiment a lot with this, but it ended up being a combination of red No. 5, Hershey syrup, and corn syrup. Seemed to give the right consistency.
No, come here. Aaron, it's you.
Oh, what is this?
Josh, it's on your ear. Your ear's bleeding, man. Give me that, I got it.
Reggie Evans did location sound, and he was very nice to do it, because he's not a sound guy. He doesn't care so much. He just wanted to be involved with the film, and so there is you can see the mic here for a second as I'm washing my hands. Now I come back. There's the mic, but for the most part, I don't think anybody notices it because it looks like a shadow of my hand or something. But this is one of the worst put together scenes in the film, and not just because I'm not in it, although I'm sure that probably pulls at your heartstrings. But I'm manning camera, and this is something where there were explicit storyboards on how to shoot this, and it just came down to time. We just did not have enough time. I was going to have to rent the camera for another 10 days if we didn't get this done in about 2 or 3 hours. And so basically we shot it all in one take, and then I deleted about 10 seconds between the shots, so it would come together like this. But the camera work is awful. What is wrong with me?
Gotten that speech from Kara. Well, you're going to get it from me. You have a wife and kids.
This is one of the first scenes that when I was doing my storyboards, which were, you know, tungsten slides that I was just taking pictures of different settings with framing and lighting exposures and experimenting with depth of field. This fountain right here I used to run by it every day, and I wanted to set this particular scene here to kind of give them a reason to elevate their voices without it necessarily being melodramatic. And so I did some tests with the lighting and found that if I used, you know, 200T film, that I was only about half a stop to a stop underexposed. And so I wanted to shoot here. And I think it looks a little grainy on probably what you're looking at, and definitely in the theaters. And unfortunately, that's something that happened in the blow-up process, because when we shot this, it was very well exposed. And as I was editing it on my home computer, so we had it transferred to mini DV, I was able to, when I had it transferred, I was able to look at these images, and they were very well exposed without any grain. But when it was blown up to 35, it went through a digital intermediate, which means it was scanned to a digital format first before it was lasered out to 35. And somehow in that, the wrong setting was used, and it introduced a lot of this digital noise or this grain. And it was something that I could have gone back and fixed, but it would have meant that the print probably would not have been ready in time for Sundance. And so that's where that noise comes in.
I don't know.
This camera work is Daniel Boucher, or Kip as we call him. I believe he even came up with this because all I had written, and I was going to have the ball being thrown back and forth just from, basically a static shot, and hopefully wide enough that you would see it both. But there was no way to do that in this room. And Kip came up with this idea of just whipping the camera back and forth, and he showed me it, and it seemed pretty appropriate. And it's pretty amazing because he had not touched a motion picture camera until this shoot, and by the end of it, he was just pretty amazing. He does some really great handheld stuff. And of course that shot. This whole deal with Aaron forgetting about bringing his camera, and then and also when he's getting out of the box the first time, he gets out too soon, and so from our perspective it's too late. But there was something in the script about this, and we actually shot parts of it, but it had to do with the fact that Abe was a type 2 diabetic, and so he had to constantly keep track of his blood sugar, and he was all about schedule and habit, and where Aaron wasn't. And so Abe is kind of the perfect guy to be using this machine that you have to follow rules to maintain symmetry for it, whereas Aaron is not so much. But yeah, I said we shot, it's a 78-minute movie, and we shot 80 minutes roughly, or it could have been an 80-minute movie, but that diabetes thing, that was one other thing that got lost. This here, the whole muffin shot, what is going on with this? It was really important to me to show that, once these guys are doing this, it's not flashy. It's not necessarily fun. They are glorified clerks at this point. Just tabulating and keeping track of numbers and then going and executing the trades. It's not necessarily any kind of running adventure. So they're kind of just, Aaron's clinging to the hope that maybe something's changed. The game is possibly different than the way he remembers it, but no, not really. The sounds that we're hearing from the TV, he was listening to 2 commercials, kind of abstract, vague, we don't know what they are type commercials, and that was really bad music that I worked up on my computer to sound like a really bad commercial.
Man, are you hungry? I haven't eaten since later this afternoon.
There's one piece of dialogue here from the pizza delivery guy. We didn't expect him to come out at that moment. He just kind of surprised us and did that. So this here with the cell phone, when they're talking about whether or not they think that if the phone is ringing here, is it also ringing in the hotel at the same moment where their doubles are? And that was something I wanted to play with, just the little things, their inability to know what might be happening, if these causality effects are adding up, or if there's any kind of paradoxical harm happening to them. And so I actually looked into this. What would happen if you had 2 cell phones with identical SIM chips in them? And I called Sprint and AT&T and Nokia and other phone companies to find out what actually would happen, and I got different answers from all of them. So I figured, well, this is perfect then. So as long as I don't clarify what the brand of the phone is or what service they have, then I can basically have it be whatever I want, and it can still be this thing that's not able for our lead characters to know about. This is a friend of Daniel Boucher's, a skateboarding friend of his who was nice enough to play the skateboarding kid in the film. And it was basically shot with one of us manning the camera and standing with our heads sticking out of the sunroof of a car as it slowly drove down the road. This here is my attempt at showing my great acting prowess. I just wanted to isolate it, not show you anything on screen except for my magnetism.
Why now? We were planning on taking a trip tomorrow, right?
Some people have asked, how exactly do you direct a film if you're acting in it? And I don't know. I've never directed a film before this. But I mean, as far as knowing whether a take is good or not, luckily or unluckily, whatever the case may be, we only shot one take of everything. So unless we said the wrong word or tripped or burst into flames, we kept the take. So it really wasn't a matter of trying to glean performances out of me or anybody else. That was stuff that we had done in rehearsal so that we could show up on when we shot and not have to worry about shooting multiple takes. Having said that, we did have the camera I rented had a video out port on it, and so we hooked that up to a camcorder, and so we would record to video as we were shooting on film, and afterwards we could take a look at what was in frame and what we got and stuff. The intention was to also pipe the sound into the camcorder and record that so that we could see them both mixed or synced up together, but that never actually worked right. Here's the car mount again that James Russell put together. This entire night scene is basically shot from two different angles, from the two different places we had the car mount on David Sullivan's car. It took about 45 minutes to set it up, so doing a third shot, that would have wasted some film, but it also would have maybe put a dent in the car, and we were trying to reduce the chance of that happening. But basically, we've got me and David in the car. Reggie Evans is in the back seat with a mic. And we just went and drove around the neighborhood around my parents' home, and I found a place where there was a street light that gave a little bit more light to us, and then the rest of it is just the lights from inside the car.
You sure you didn't see him when we drove past?
No, what?
I've been lucky enough to do a lot of Q&As this year at different festivals and when the film opened in different cities, and the question I get the most when it comes to plot, and it's pretty satisfying, is about Granger and how it is that he's there and what it all means. And there is information in the film about every other plot point except for that one. There is no information. Well, there's no concrete information in the film about how it is that Granger found out about this machine or where he came from. Because the thing is that Abe and Aaron have no way of knowing. All they know is that here's a man who clearly has learned about it. He must have learned from one of them, and yet neither one of them can imagine a scenario in which they would have told somebody else about it. And they don't know from what point in time he must have traveled back, but they know that he did. And so it's important for us to not know these things because they don't know and they don't have any way of knowing. And it's Abe's, especially his not knowing, that causes him to use the failsafe machine and go back 3 days and reboot everything with the intention of, possibly not even telling Aaron about the machine this time around, if that means that he can stop this line of events from happening. So it seemed wrong. If the entire story, for the most part, we are where Abe and Aaron are. We know what they know as they know it, and it seemed wrong to give the audience information that Abe and Aaron have no way of knowing, especially when it's the catalyst for Abe's action. Having said that, as a writer, it's important to me to know what actually happened, and so a little bit of that bleeds into this story. At the end, Aaron says something along the lines of, he says, when he's talking to Abe, he says, "You'll watch her all the time," talking about Rachel. This guy's crazy enough to walk into a room full of people waving a shotgun around. What do you think he's going to do if he ever finds her alone? And what I imagine is that eventually this guy with the gun, this ex-boyfriend of Rachel, does find her alone, and it ends badly. And maybe she gets hurt, maybe something even worse happens. And it is, Abe knowing that he could have done something about this, and that he still can possibly by telling Granger. I imagine that it's him who tells Granger about the machine, and that that's why there's a problem with them being in close proximity to each other, with these causality feedback loops that I imagine would exist. This scene right here, we're almost done with it, but it was probably the easiest to edit of almost all the scenes, because we actually got pretty good coverage. I think it was near the end of the shoot, and I was starting to realize that I needed a few more seconds at the beginning and end of each shot just to have some comfortable room to maneuver as I'm editing. And so I had that, and the audio was very good, because the audio got better as the shoot went along. And it really was a matter of just editing for timing, and just trying to make the scene as close to the script as possible just through editing, and instead of trying to redub a bunch of lines or re-edit things in a different sequence than had been intended.
The question should have been what to do with the comatose man in the guest bedroom.
We can wait this out.
But in Abe's mind, he was already compiling the list.
This next shot at the U-Haul, we shot in the summer, and so it doesn't get dark in at least in Central Standard Time until 9 or later. So we had to do this after 9, but the U-Haul was closed by then. So this was all shot without their knowing about it. Except for this is obviously shot when they were open.
Or roughly 2,000 liters in 4 days. A Class E oxygen tank holds 625 liters.
This is some pretty awful camera work here. This is me on the dolly, running the camera, and Kip, I believe, or my brother was pulling the dolly, and we were just trying to do it as fast as we could because we had to get out of there. And this sound effect is the same 3-second sound effect of the cylinders rustling up against each other. And I reversed it and stretched it out and reverbed it and made it so that it lasted as long as I needed to. This is supposed to be Abe coming and knocking Abe out. That's actually me there standing in for the Abe that you don't see out of focus, and I'm carrying something that hopefully you're supposed to assume is the nitrous oxide container. It's actually a rice cooker, but I thought the silhouette looked pretty great, and I'm actually sitting there on top of David Sullivan, telling him, open your eyes, close your eyes, okay, go Dad. It was the best directing I think I've ever done. And here it is. Here's the performance that won an Independent Spirit Award nomination, at least. We'll see how much further it goes. Look at that. That's real tears, my friends. Real tears. And the color timing for these shots, we shot in the summer, and Dallas in the summer is very green and blue, very summery, and obviously, and in the color timing, I did the best I could to kind of tone all that down. I mean, it was something that even back at the testing stage, I had tried to do, and felt like you could do it with some success. So we turned down all the greens, and actually it was pretty great because they actually did more. In the color timing process we did in the 35mm blow up, they were able to do more than I had thought possible in my testing. They were actually able to select the green and digitally tone it down without hurting anything else.
I hope you're not implying that any day is unimportant to Cortex Semi.
There's the music to tell you what's happening. This is a real kind of a learning experience for me as far as music. I don't know, it's something I had never thought about. I mean, I knew there was music in films, but when it's appropriate to hear it and when it's not, that was just such a learning process for me.
Promise to do the few small things I ask. I will, in return,
That, I never know how successful that is, that fade into fade into fade into different shots. It was planned like that from the script. But when we shot it, it just seemed so awkward to be shooting little 4 or 5 minute or 5-second segments. And then, so when I finally edited them together, it's still one of those things where, I mean, it's what I imagined. I just don't know. I don't know. I guess it's okay. I don't know.
How? Aaron would explain that when he went up there and found the failsafe running.
This shot here, oh no, I hope I'm not being redundant, because I think we might have said this on the crew commentary, but that, we shot that, once, and the dolly shot that pulls out from the box that Aaron is seeing, and we looked around and we realized that there was a Sprite can on top of the box, and we didn't have video tap, so there's no way to know whether the Sprite can was actually on the box when we shot or not. And so it was a big question and answer period. We're asking everybody whose can it was, and did you put it down? When did you put it down? All this. And in the end, we couldn't figure it out, so we had to reshoot it without the Sprite can. And it's a good thing we did, because when I finally got to take a look at the footage, yeah, that Sprite can's in there. That cereal bowl thing, that's when it really started to feel like a movie, because for the sole reason that, I knocked cereal all over my mom's nice clean floor, and there's a mess and stuff, and I've got my sister was there with the Polaroid taking pictures, like we're a real movie shoot or something, so that if we have to recreate that shot, we'll know exactly what it looked like. So I thought it was like a real movie, man.
But for reasons that are only evident to me now,
I bought that sweatshirt special just for that character.
He just had more invested. So I left. He had already performed the task, as I had intended to, of recording the conversations of the day just in case. Through that earpiece, he had a 3-second lead on the world.
Aaron, you need some sleep. Some real sleep.
I can't. I've got a schedule.
He had but to speak aloud the words.
All right, we're about to see almost everybody from the crew. That's Reggie's legs and Kip's legs, and I believe James Russell isn't out there. But it's definitely Reggie and Kip.
This is track 3. Abe is bringing my car around and I'm on my way to the court. I'll see Will there. I'll invite him to the party and make sure he's bringing Rachel's boyfriend.
This coming up, this character, Will, he was a friend of David Sullivan's, Brandon Blagg, and he was nice enough to play this part. I feel horrible about it, because it's, there's some ugly shots in the film, but the lighting in this one is just, not well thought out. It's just direct sunlight, and we didn't do anything to screen it or anything like that, and I don't know. I would be not too thrilled if I was in a film and the one shot I'm in has that kind of unflattering lighting, I guess. But he was nice enough to do this, but then for the dubbing, this is a year or 2 years later, when I needed to redo the sound because the sound was not so great because it was outside, he had moved. And so the easiest thing to do was to get my brother to do the voice. So basically what you're hearing here is my brother John, his voice. Look at that set design. What, are you kidding me? It was actually important. The way that the garage kind of changes was important to me. At the beginning we see it the way it's set up when the 4 of them are working in it, and then later on when it's just Abe and Aaron and the box, it has like a different setup. Which, nothing drastic. I just wanted it to not be the same as what we had originally seen. It hopefully shows something about that some time has passed. But this, I just wanted it completely disheveled, looking like they might actually be moving all their stuff out. That it's just an artifact. That there's really no more need for any kind of structure to the garage.
Come on, it has to be you. She said she was there because you told her you would be there. Don't tell me I came back and did this for nothing.
He doesn't fire.
No, he didn't.
He never fires, not even when you rush him.
No, he didn't. The time I wasn't there. He didn't.
I think almost all this audio is actual location audio. There's maybe 2 lines that are dubbed, but I think they're hidden pretty well. That was not a good day for Shane acting. I think I messed up my lines a record 2 or 3 times.
We definitely can. I mean, he leaves it in the truck before he goes in. I mean, we don't even need to, but I mean, if it makes you feel better.
What's wrong with our hands?
What do you mean?
Why can't we write like normal people?
I don't know. I can see the letters. I know what they should look like. I just
This
can't.
is something that people ask me about sometimes at screenings, about why it is that they're losing their ability to write. You know, I knew that this machine, as alluring as it was going to be and intoxicating, that it was going to have these detrimental effects and not just, you know, these causality or paradoxical things. You know, that essentially by the end of this, these guys are copies of copies, and that, you know, that on top of, you know, how dangerous this device might actually just be in general, was going to have some wear and tear on them. And
No, it's your friend Robert.
the ear bleeding is, you know, of course it's something that's messing with them physically, but it was almost a plot device because we see Aaron's ear bleed first. And you know, there's really no reason to know why at that point. But by the end of it, we know that it's okay. Well, he's actually had more exposure to the machine than Abe has, and then at the end we see Abe's ear bleeding. But the inability to write, that was mainly just because it's something that it always sort of interested me. The idea that you can, that I can know what letters look like, and I can make them with my right hand, but with my left, I'm pretty much useless. And I know that we can talk about why that is as far as muscle memory. But it does seem like it's that weird place between knowing something and being able to physically manifest it, and that's what I wanted them to be messed with, or that part of them to be messed with.
And made of it something more.
We lit this with almost nothing. It's a halogen work light at the front of my parents' house, and that was just on the street in front of their house. And then the interior of the car lights. Samantha Thompson and my friend David Joyner, who's playing her date for the evening. I don't know, just everybody. This party, you know, it wasn't organized really. It was just, let's invite everybody, and they show up, and almost nobody knew that we were shooting at any given time. Maybe now they did, but like Samantha and David did such a great job of just kind of stepping into this, you know, and pretending as if there had been the previous 3 or 4 minutes of drama that you don't actually see on screen. They really kind of stepped into that really well, I thought. Also at that party scene, there's 2 cut lines, one from Abe and one from Aaron, and it was basically, you know, it wasn't a lot of information. It was just the fact that they were at odds with each other about whether to do this thing or not. And I shot it. I had this brainiac idea, I thought, of shooting it at something like 30 frames a second, so that it was just slow enough to look odd. And then, you know, then I would slow the audio down and match it. And I don't know, it just wasn't good. And so I didn't want to use the lines. I didn't want to use the lines at normal speed, and I didn't want to use them slowed down. And basically, it was just, at that point, I just didn't want to see that confrontation by the time I was editing, because it would just seem more of a moment that maybe you could only remember but not actually experience, or, you know, as far as what they experienced. So that just seemed to keep it more surreal was the way to go.
You're not going to be able to watch them forever.
And that's all at DFW Airport. I think we go over this in the crew commentary at length, I think, but we clearly did not have permission to be there. This shot here, coming around David on a circular track that was right out in my parents' front yard, well, in the street in front of their house, and I think it was the first time, maybe the first time, that all the neighbors got to see that. Oh, wait, what's going on at the Carruth house? So I don't know if that was embarrassing or otherwise for them.
Tell you what, why don't you take Karen Lauren?
that was real important to me to have this big old, I think that's a Korean Air jet going by. So we waited just for that, just for the plane to come by before we started rolling camera.
I'm telling you this now. Go out there and do whatever the hell you want. There's no way.
Because the way we were shooting this, it was almost, you know, we go to all the trouble to be at this airport, but some of these shots, you know, it's difficult to even know where you are. Well, okay, there it's not. Oh yeah, the Korean Air stewardesses. They were nice enough to stay in the shot.
Now I have repaid any...
Did I say stewardesses? Because I meant flight attendants. What kind of a sexist pig am I?
My voice is the only proof that you will have of the truth of any of this. I might have written a letter with my signature.
Here you can see the back of everyone's head. You can see the back of my brother Caleb's head, the back of my mom's head.
Maybe you've had the presence of mind to record this. That's your problem.
Almost anybody who was willing to wear a white hard hat is in that shot.
Morning. Every half meter, placez les chaque demi-mètre, everywhere, partout, everywhere.
And if you look,
Partout.
That's it's an airplane hangar that we actually got permission to get the morning of. I frantically called around every small airplane hangar in the area, and Henley's was nice enough to let us do it. They were really great. All their employees helped. These credits here I did on my laptop as we were doing the blow up in December of 2003. I kept asking them, how do I do the credits? And they go, oh, just give us an image. And I was like, are you kidding? Really? It's that easy? So I did this in After Effects and I exported it as this huge 15 gig file, and they printed that out to film. I was pretty amazed that it was that easy. But yeah, let's see. Everybody laughs at that when they're watching it at the festivals. At the food provided by Chip and Kathy Carruth. Let's see, Scott Douglas. I don't think I've said anything about him. He was pretty great. He still is great. He's a friend of mine, a friend of my brother's. He paid for the blow up. He paid for the blow up, and that was pretty expensive. So I wanted to put him in the credits, and yeah. Okay. Well, anyways, rather than go on and on about these credits, thanks so much for watching the film. And there's if you go to primermovie.com, which I'm hopefully going to keep up as long as I can. There's some information there if you're interested in the making of or any questions about like specific scenes or whatever. But yeah, that's about it. Thanks a lot. Bye.